Welcome back, everyone. I want to talk now, as we keep going on the subject of the elusive answer of what is justice or not. And Andrew brought up a really interesting point before break about, well, where is that line for police and blue, instead of just talking about black and white here? Well, let's go to Brooklyn now. The Brooklyn DA, Kenneth Thompson, says he is launching an investigation into the death of an unarmed black man who was reportedly shot by a rookie police officer in the stairwell of a Brooklyn housing complex last Thursday. Medical examiner has ruled that Mr. Gurley's death was a homicide. Police say he was shot by Officer Peter Lang, who was a probationary NYPD officer assigned to monitor the Lewis Pink housing complex. Commissioner Bratney called the shooting, quote-unquote, a total accident. Police union has called for a complete investigation. Now, by all accounts, two rookie cops, you can argue right there's a problem, but they're in a dimly lit, dilapidated housing unit. They're walking up the stairwell, and two people are coming down, did nothing wrong, guns drawn, fires, one shot, kills a guy right in the chest. There's an investigation, and maybe the criminal process will play out and there won't be any questions about it. However, would it be any different, and should it be held higher or more, if a tenant in that same building didn't feel safe in the building for reasonable reasons and had a registered gun? She's walking up the stairwell, she sees a shadow figure, she shoots him in the chest. I'll start with you, Mayo. How would that tenant be treated differently than that officer, who at least had the benefit of training and also walking up with a partner? How would they, if at all, be treated differently in the eyes of the law?
Well, first of all, it wouldn't take you a year or to get an indictment, number one. Number two, there'd be probably a felony complaint filed right off the bat. And on top of that, now that person would have to try to determine how he or she is going to defend it. You're going to hope you have the ability to hire an attorney. If not, you're going to get an attorney appointed for you. But there's going to be a heavy presumption of guilt, basically. And when you're dealing with law enforcement, there's no statement that needs to be made, you know, for, what is it, 72 hours. When you're dealing with law enforcement, at the end of the day, it takes this long to make a presentation to the grand jury where you're going through everything. And I will tell you now that the grand jury process would be extremely different. There would not be a lot of exculpatory information that would be set forth. As a defense attorney, you can be in the room with your client, but you can't ask the questions. So it's heavily weighted against the accused.
Is there a higher standard for police officers?
Yeah,
if a police officer says, boy, I felt like I was in harm's way, is
Actually, yes, but now based upon Supreme Court rulings, if the police have a reasonable fear, then yes, there is a presumption that they've acted legally.
I think, look, in this case, based upon the comments made by Commissioner Bratton, by Mayor de Blasio, I mean, no one is basically taking the position that what this officer did was in any shape, manner, or form
Agreed, Bill.
justified.
What I'm trying to ask a different question is, when we see situations where there's judgment calls that are made, and this one clearly, at least on the face of it, looks, let it play out in the courts, but it looks like bad judgment. Kid made a bad mistake. Should the public be held to a higher or lower standard in the same situation that I laid out than the police officer? And I'm not sure what the answer is.
I think the answer is the public should be held to a lower standard. These police officers, we give these police officers license to carry firearms. We entrust them to enforce the law. They go through rigorous training in the police academy and everything else. And so basically they're taught what the law is. And basically these police officers know that what they're not supposed to do is walk around with a gun out of the holster with their finger on the trigger. Okay? It's one thing to have the gun drawn in case they need it. So the answer to your question is the police are and should be held to a much higher standard than the untrained civilian.
I don't know that they are. I think that they should be, and I think that when we're at trial, the police are given great latitude to talk about their experience based upon their number of years as a law enforcement officer, so we believe that they have better vision than everyone else, and they can...
And don't you think, guys, that in a lot of ways, whether it's Staten Island, whether it's wherever the cases are, at the end, this is the evolving question that we're getting to. What should we expect from law enforcement now that you have so many of these button cameras? Now that people are being able to see in living color what happened in a lot of situations, and then, not Ferguson obviously, but then you got to figure out for yourself what the expectation is. I think cops got a tough job, and I think that sometimes we expect them to be perfect and they're human beings, but at the same end, should we expect them should we expect less of them than the public? Because lately, until recently in the law, it's kind of how it feels.
Higher standard for police officers, Richard, in my opinion, piggybacking on what they said. But I really believe this is a failure of leadership. We never look at the historical perspective. This same exact shooting happened just a few years ago. The man's name was Timothy Stansbury. The city settled the case for $2 million with the family. That's the new system. You won't get justice in the courtroom, but we'll cut you a check. And that's so Timothy Stansbury and the police commissioner Ray Kelly called it a bad shooting right off the bat. Same exact thing.
Yeah.
So I say a failure of leadership because if it was on a staircase, these so-called vertical patrols, why haven't you changed procedure so you don't have two rookies with each other?
I got to hit a final break here. Stay with us, guys. We'll be right back.